Hello, it's Anna and Sophie from Soundyard here. We make Chris Skinner's Countryside podcast, and we've got something very exciting to share with you. We have a new service that's being launched, and it's called Spoken Stories.
Spoken Stories is all about recording the voices and memories of your loved ones in outstanding quality, so they can be enjoyed for generations to come. For example, you know the story that Grandma tells that everyone in the family has heard before. Well, Spoken Stories is about getting those stories down and preserving them for your family history. Spoken Stories is about gifting someone the time to capture these personalities and unique voices.
We record your loved ones' tales, whether it's their whole life story so far or something more specific like a life-changing event. It is a gorgeous experience, and what you're left with is a beautiful monologue that really captures the essence of that person.
Think of it like an audio portrait, and take a listen to a snippet of this one from Diane's spoken story, recorded in her beautiful garden.
I was born in 1951 at Newmarket, and unfortunately I didn't see Mum for a year. I was looked after by a lovely nurse called Diane, my name, because my mum had TB when I was born. And so my mother never worked because with her problem with her, lungs, she had to go and have it sort of pumped up every so often. She used to do a lot of dressmaking, so she always made our clothes years ago. But yeah, she was a lovely mum, yeah, and Dad as well, yeah. That's very nice childhood I had, yeah, very nice. Yeah. I got married February the 16th, 1974. The weather was gorgeous. I ended up putting a big sort of T-shirt under my wedding dress I didn't need. I had a lovely one of those transparent umbrellas in case it rained, and it was just a beautiful day. I think I'm always sort of quite cheerful. I mean, if I go down the Luke and deliver some eggs to somebody, I'll meet somebody and chat, and then Paul say, "Where have you been?" I said, "I've been chatting to people." That's just my way. That's just how I am. We've always lived here. We had this built in 1974. They put the footings down in February and we moved in the August. Years ago, I used to go around the village on a bike, and when I had Ian, he'd sit on the back. We live in a lovely area. We've got lovely neighbours. They help us all out, which you all do with neighbours, and that's very, very nice. And as I said to Paul, I'm hoping we can keep this place on until, well, I don't want to move from here until I go out in a brown box. I hope that's not too soon.
If you'd like more information about Spoken Stories and to take advantage of our special introductory offer, you can head to www.soundyard.org/spoken stories.
And keep listening after this episode with Chris, and you'll hear another example of a spoken story. It's a view of the world from a 6-year-old.
Chris Skinner's Countryside podcast with Matthew Gudgeon.
Back on the farm with Chris Skinner, High Ash Farm, on a lunchtime visit. Still quite bright and warm, and a flock of birds we're looking at over on one of the horses' paddocks.
Hello, Matthew. Welcome to High Ash Farm. Wow, what a fantastic sight. They say one of these old mottos out in the countryside is birds of a feather flock together. Oh, look at that. Wow, they've just... Oh, and another one's just joining them. 2 flocks, 2 for the price of 1. Starlings on the horse pastures, the tightly grazed, almost lawn-like pastures here at Ash Farm for the horses to graze. And that's why the horses are there. Don't tell the girls. It's to attract the bird life for the swallows, the house martins, swifts, and in particular, starlings. That flock is dense and black. and it's the beginning of the big murmurations at this time of the year.
And we've got some other starlings, just a handful, on the telephone or electricity cables up there, and they're clicking away and singing the starling songs, aren't they?
Yes, and it's enormously varied with a lot of mimicry as to the places that they've been feeding. Now, those 4 or 5 on the wires there are on guard duty. They are guards, starlings. So they're doing sort of sentry duty, and if there's a sparrowhawk about or a kestrel or some other bird of prey, they will give the alarm and look at the flock going across the grass. The ones at the back of the flock feed, and when they've exhausted the insects, they fly to the front and overtake their friends. So it's kind of like a caterpillar track going across the field. Look at them moving across. And Matthew, if you went back 200 years, starlings would be scarce to rare in the UK, but because of the Industrial Revolution, we felled a lot of our natural timber resources in the UK to burn it for charcoal, for heat, for energy, and put down cereals and in particular pasture. And starlings, sort of native of southern Europe and western Europe, started to move northwards and eastwards and came to the UK. Beautiful, beautiful birds, lots of colours in the plumage, although where we're looking at them, 50 metres away, they just look uniformly black. But they love short grazed pasture. They've got these little beaks which they probe into the ground, and they are after leather jackets, wireworm, any soil invertebrates near the ground level, and in moist weather the worms will come up, and that's a day's food for an adult starling. Now, the starlings have finished all their breeding now, so you'll have juveniles there, which are a slightly different colour, and adult birds as well, and they're kind of learning. They are quite gregarious, is the right word to use. They love being together in flocks, and that gives them security. It's because many eyes in a flock of birds means that you're relatively safe. But look at that. I mean, the amazing sight, 50, 60 yards from us.
See if we can pick up some of these sounds from that sort of distance away, and we're in the car as well. But let's have a listen. We've got the sentinels up on the cable and several hundred, maybe 200 or 300 down on the deck.
250 as an estimate.
We're getting some clicks there, aren't we? Are they impersonating? Oh, up they go.
Up they go onto the hedge and onto the next paddock. Oh, some have landed in the top of the hedge. That wasn't an alarm.
And back.
Oh, they come back. Wonderful. If I could...
Well, we should get some more sounds now, shouldn't we? Because they're much nearer, and many more on the cable.
Yes. 20 yards away.
Yes, I was going to say the impersonating clicks, presumably, are of swallows.
Yes, that's obviously they're feeding out on the pastures all day, every day. The swallows are feeding right over the top of them. So it's one of the list of repertoires. It's rather like you sharing information where the best restaurants are, if you like, with your friends. And they kind of have their own language. They don't obviously think like us or behave like us, but once you study wildlife or been in close proximity to it, as I have all my life, you realise there is a language, whether it's a blackbird flying away from you, giving, that's an alarm call. I know the sound the swallows make if there's a sparrowhawk nearby or a kestrel flying over. They have a certain alarm call that they make, and lots of birds do that. Carrion crows will do it. All birds have a kind of an alarm system, or they listen to other birds. But starlings have this list of sounds, and their mimicry is superb. We often think of myna birds as great mimics, but I think starlings come a close second, if anything, certainly in the UK as a native bird now. Nest about March and April, bright blue eggs, usually in the soffit under the eaves of houses. I put up nest boxes for them and they love those, and very, very attractive birds as well.
Another thing a lot of people know about them is that their motto is cleanliness is next to godliness. They love a good bath, don't they?
Absolutely. Not far from where we're sitting, got my small garden here, and I've got a lovely old 16th century stone bath, which is warmed quite a lot one side, where ladies or gentlemen from decades and centuries ago did all their washing in it, and it's about 4 or 5 inches deep. Made out of stone, hewn out. It's really beautiful, and I keep that filled with water. And I've done videos in the past of perhaps 30 or 40. Talk about having a bath with a friend to save water. Well, the water kind of flies up out of the pond. They absolutely love bathing, so just beautiful to see. Well, that started our podcast off in no uncertain way, and we'll try and follow different bird species as we drive around the farm. And I noticed that just this side of the hedge where the starlings are feeding, there's a couple of dozen house sparrows there. There they go, look, just flown up exactly where the starlings were.
Yes, they're in the hedge there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely wonderful. So they're all feeding en masse as well. So it is that time of year. I will have to announce that I think autumn's here. A couple of mornings this week. There's been a certain dampness in the air, a certain coolness, and the smell of damp earth. And somehow that permeates into the back of my head, and without knowing it, I feel autumn is here.
So it's a birdie sort of episode of the podcast this week. I know a lot of people will relish that. We've also got a birdie answer to the conundrum that Chris set last week coming up. So I'm looking forward to this, Chris.
Yes,
and
okay.
Rat is riding shotgun.
He is. He's on my lap, ready to go. So we'll start the truck.
Total indifference towards the starlings.
Absolutely, yes. Well, they're not worth chasing because you can't chase them. They fly out of the way. Right, here we go.
And part of looking at the birds on High Ash Farm really is using Chris Skinner's mobile bird hide, aka the farm truck.
Matthew, we haven't hardly moved 100 yards, and in the next horse paddock it's also pretty well black. And lowland crows, 3 species, all feeding on the short grazed horse pastures. In front of us, the smallest one of the group over there on the left is a jackdaw, and then there's a couple of carrion crows and 1 or 2 rooks feeding with them all joined together, all 3 species.
And the carrion crows, you don't often see many, do you? In fact, that just a pair controls an area.
Yes, that's exactly what's happened here. I don't do any control of predatory species whatsoever, but I don't get overwhelmed with them. And if you're overwhelmed with anything here, it would be the rooks and the jackdaws, but they're pretty good. They're mainly vegetarian, although the rooks have that long probing beak. They will drive farmers mad by probing into the soil, particularly if you've sown your wheat not quite deep enough, or your barley. And maize is another favourite food for them. There's an old farming motto for the 3 species of crows. Carrion crows are really exempt from this, although they get the blame as well. A farmer went to sow, 1 to rot and 1 to grow, 1 for the rook and 1 for the crow. And the crow's exempt from that, to be honest, so they don't really eat grain. And look on the wires right beside us there.
The tails give it away. Those aren't starlings, are they?
No, those are swallows, all beginning to line up. I think that'll be mum and dad, because I can see some long tail streamers and some short tail streamers a bit further away, only a foot or so, and they're getting prepared to leave. Some of our swallows here at the farm are on third brood, so it looks as though we'll have some here well into October. I visited the nests last night in the stables, and I think nearly every nest had youngsters in because of the mild, humid weather we've had and the ample supply of insects on all these short-grazed pastures. So I do apologise, everybody. We've hardly moved from where we started, and we're just spoilt for choice. And look over the hedge there.
Starlings doing some hedge hopping.
Yes, they certainly are. Oh, what a wonderful start of this podcast. Yeah, just wonderful to see all these birds. And it is that season when all the birds start to congregate. They'll spend the day feeding together and then, just as importantly, spend the night together. So the season's just coming up, just dawning, when you will see the big starling murmurations, the big flocks of corvids all nesting communally, and it happens right across the bird world as well. So we'll see if we can catch up with another species. Come on, start the truck, and off we go.
It's a lovely autumnal scene, Chris, watching the... Are they jackdaws all over that freshly mown field?
No, Matthew, they're rooks. That's a confusion which everybody has. How can you tell the three main lowland crow species apart? And we looked at them on the horse pasture there, and now we're absolutely spoilt because there's close to 500 there feeding. Some are arriving, some are flying over the hedge in front of us and landing on the horse pastures, and they're all looking for the same thing, soil invertebrates. Probably hardly any crows there whatsoever. Another old country adage is one rook is a crow and lots of crows are rooks. If that helps.
You're full of the old countryside wisdom.
Well, because
today,
I am an old boy this Sunday. It's the big 75 today, would you believe? It's a bit of a shock. Sunday, the 8th of September, 1949, no less. So,
and you've lived here and known this land since you can first remember?
Yes, it's just part of me almost. But you are, as a farmer, you're a custodian only. And I hope to kind of get it back to as it was when I was a child, bearing in mind where we're sitting in the farm truck. My father and myself as a young lad, I was only 6 or 7 years old, would walk to this side of the hedge, and here would be a crop of wheat. As in the post-war years, home food production was absolutely crucial, and there were flocks of sparrows which gathered together in June, late June, all through July and into August, and they would plunder the wheat fields, bearing in mind the wheat didn't harvest as early back then as it does today, and a lot of it would have been spring wheat, so you had overwinter stubbles. The cereal crops were planted in the spring, and they ripened a little bit later. The yields were nowhere near what they are today. Today, good crop of wheat is 10 tonnes a hectare. That's about 4 tonnes an acre. If you got 2 tonnes an acre back then with the spring varieties, you were doing quite well. But the sparrows, you didn't kind of mind them too much for what they ate, but they're members of the weaver bird family. They're very messy nesters, very scruffy straw nesters up in the trees with the tree sparrows, or under the ridges of their cottages and in the old clay block farm buildings. And they're equally messy feeders. They will take one grain out and spill 10 on the floor. So my father was incandescent about sparrows, and he would order 1,000 shotgun cartridges from the local supplier in Norwich called Darlow's. There's a big stag over the top of the shop back then, which I think's still there today, right in the centre of Norwich, and he would ring their gun shop up, 1,000 sparrow shot, 500 12 bore and 500 16 bore, and my job was to carry one of the double-barrelled shotguns to this side of the hedge. He would hold the other one, he'd clap his hands and shout, and up would go can only describe it as a flock of locusts. There were thousands, perhaps 10, 15,000 sparrows. It's hard to imagine what I was seeing back then. But then a hole would appear in the flock where this dust-like shot went through the flock, and half the sparrows were wounded, not many were killed outright. And then I'd hand the gun over, or they'd almost snatch it from me, and 2 more barrels with the 12-bore, the larger one second as they were all flying, and the 2 more holes would appear in the flock. I mean, sparrows are a red list species now, house sparrows and their country cousins, the rarer tree sparrow. We hardly have any of those here, but we've got well over 100 house sparrows. And so there was this war of attrition against bird life, really. Anything that could be shot was shot.
And these rooks were part of that?
Yes, there'd be rook shoots, and until really recently, particularly in the county of Norfolk, South Norfolk in particular, where you get the big rookeries, perhaps 400-500 nests, and at certain times of the year, farmers would go out and shoot the branches, not the branches on the trees, the name given to young rooks when they leave the nest but can't fly properly yet, and they would scramble about in a canopy, so they were easy shooting because they couldn't fly far, and you'd shoot them, get them down on the ground, and they'd be sent off to London on the train from Thorpe Station for rook pie, which you can't make this up. But we're looking at a black line across the field there, and they're doing no harm whatsoever. That's a fallow plot. It's now been mown, ready for this year's cultivation for ground nesting birds for next year. And they're feeding harmlessly and having a whale of a time out there, so they're not causing anybody problem. And now they're coming back off the meadow on our right-hand side and flying down to join the flock. So we've already seen a giant flock of starlings forming. And this is the foundation of one of the roosts on the farm, where we'll have between 1,000 and 2,000 corvids nesting. And then they will leave High Ash Farm and the rookery roost at Dunstan in a neighbouring village, and they will all join a giant roost just on the outskirts of Norwich, east side of Norwich, close to Strumpshaw, a village there. And that's the biggest corvid roost, not in the UK, but in Europe. 100,000 plus birds.
Well, they're a lovely sight, watching those rooks happily pecking away at the newly mown field. So we've seen a large number of starlings, large number of rooks. You're rather hoping that we see goldfinch, because
Yes.
we're about a quarter of an hour away from their feeding time,
Yes,
aren't we?
we are, and we've had a look at the teasels up there, 2 or 3 of the teasel crops on the farm, and do you know what? I haven't seen a goldfinch. Sometimes they frustrate me. They're beautiful, beautiful birds, and we'll have another go at them next week, because each day the afternoon feed gets a little bit earlier, because the daylight's getting shorter. We're losing about 25 minutes of daylight between this Sunday and next Sunday, so the days are getting shorter. That means feeding times are getting shorter. Again, that helps to stimulate feeding with flocks. If you find a good source of food, then all the birds flock together to plunder that, and they move on, but they're always vigilant. And more coming right over the top, that lovely sort of diamond shape on the tail, and the white round the base of the beak tells me straight away they're rooks flying right over the top of us to join the flock just 100 yards or so away.
It's gone a little cooler, and there's some dense cloud as well, so maybe butterflies a little off the agenda today, although we've got a warbird going on above her.
Yes, we have. It's a special military fly past for my 75th birthday, Matthew. I forgot to tell you.
Well, that's amazing, the sway you have in military circles. But you notice that they're always quiet in the lunch hour, and now we're into the afternoon, they're back up there again.
Yes, they certainly are.
Lots of questions, and here's one from Kerry. who says, I was in my bathroom, Chris, and heard something scurrying in the ceiling cavity. It then scurried down the wall, then into a narrow boarded up area covering the pipes, 4 inches wide by 12 inches high, and then under the bath. A little paw jutted out for a second from under the side cover of the bath. It moved quickly. I assumed it was either a rat or a mouse. Upon pulling off the cover from the side of the bath, though, I discovered this beautiful little bat, and there's a photo attached. About 3 inches long. I've tried identifying it. Is it a pipistrelle? What do you think, Chris?
Yes, well, I've had a look at the picture, and I went through a bat identification guide. Because of the shape of the ears, the ears are really well separated. It's got a very, very dark face, which is very visible. The face is slightly hairy, and it has the tiniest little feet you can imagine. There they are on the surface of the fingers of the hand that got picked up. So there we are, and I've easy to identify. It's a whiskered bat. So there we are, and easy to tell. It's got no nose flap, and so I went across the bat identification guide, found this. It's fairly common, especially around houses, woodland, anywhere like that, farmsteads, and it's across the country, and it's one of 16 UK species, some of which are very rare indeed.
Here's one from Chris Hanley, who lives in the Peak District. Have you noticed a distinct lack of haws this year? May last year, a fantastic month for hawthorn blossom up here. The haws were plentiful by autumn and were the last berries to be eaten, with still a great number in December. This year, not so. The blossom was poor, and now the trees have sparse fruit. Has this been the case with you in Norfolk?
No, this particular year we have an incredibly heavy crop. Right beside the truck here, by coincidence, Matthew, is a wonderfully mature hawthorn hedge with some dog rose scattered in as well. So we've got hips and haws, and it's just coming up to that time of year when the hawthorn leaves start to shrivel and expose the berries. And when you can see the little branches from last year just up on top of the hedge, they're absolutely bent over with the berries for this year. They're English hawthorns, so they'll just have one seed inside each berry. Midland hawthorn, slightly different species, will have 2 berries usually inside each one, and as they ripen they'll be plundered by the winter visiting thrushes, things like redwing and fieldfare, which we have lots of here. So this hedge won't be cut until perhaps the end of the season in this particular case. It was cut 2 years ago, and it might go 1 more year before we need to cut it. And some of the hedges here at High Ash Farm on the lighter soil we'll cut every 4 or 5 years. But the weather up in the Peak District, and this is crucial, was absolutely appalling this spring. So although there was plenty of blossom, and the picture illustrates that perfectly that's been sent to us, there was very little pollination just because of the protracted length of cold, wet weather, which we missed most of here in Norfolk. So our pollination was normal with the hawthorn blossom, and so that's the reason why you haven't got many berries up there. It's pretty universal across the north and west of the UK this year, the lack of haws.
Now, Jenny Mann has emailed you, Chris, a nice photograph of a moth. Aren't you lucky, you see? A black and white moth. I cannot find it in my book and wonder if you have an identification, says Jenny.
Yes, I looked at it and immediately burst out laughing.
Is it a Newcastle United fan?
It looks like that, doesn't it? But I burst out laughing for the simple reason I've had head-on photos of moths to identify. I've had aerial view of a moth to identify lots and lots of times, and this is the first time I've had an underneath view of a moth through glass. So you horrible podcast listeners, you made my life quite difficult. So I start to scratch my head, but I could see through the wings really carefully. So the underside photo, which is what it is, of a clouded border moth. So there we are. It's under the old numbering scheme. There's modern moths have all new numbers with a species number and then the class number within the species on them. And I still go, and I've been trained to use something called Bradley and Fletcher. And on that guide for UK moths, it's number 1887, Lamus pilus marginata. And widespread and common moth, larvae, feeds on poplars, aspen and on sallows. There we are. Wonderful picture. What a challenge.
And I have to say, I mean, whatever he says, Chris loves to get a photograph of a moth.
Yes.
He spends his whole evening then looking them up.
I've
don't
been
you?
going through my moth book and I got to number 1887, would you believe? I think there's about 40 species or so of British butterflies and thousands of native British moths, including micro moths. You horrible podcast listeners, what a challenge. But there we are, I've cracked it, and I'm certain it's a clouded border.
Now, Chris, a fan of the podcast, listening in Germany. And we've got to say hello to Anna Boehm. Chris, you're the absolute best. Matthew and Rat are obviously also a fantastic addition. Where is Rattle? There he is.
There he
look.
is. You can just see the cereal stems moving, and
Well, he
he
heard
heard
his
his name,
In
and,
he
and
comes.
now you've caused trouble. Now he's come back in the truck, and he's on my lap. There we are. Good boy.
Wants to eat the microphone. Noel says, thought you'd enjoy a shot of a yellow finch enjoying our sunflowers. We look forward to the podcast each week, and this is in Vermont in the USA. I spoke too soon, didn't
You
I?
did.
Jennifer Bishop in Vermont in America, and they're a yellow finch.
Yes, so we'll try and sort of top trump that on next week's programme by doing our native goldfinches. If I haven't throttled the dog betwixt now and then, come here then on my lap again. Oh, no, he's going to. I just have to pick him up. Excuse me.
And off goes Chris to pick him up. I think that might have been my fault, so Rat will get the blame. And also, we had last week, Chris, you're giving us a conundrum.
Yes.
Just tell us the question you set.
Right, it was set last Sunday, and that's a significant date. It was the 1st of September, and the conundrum went like this. Today, 1st of September, I am safe. Tomorrow, Monday, the 2nd of September, I should be worried. Why am I worried? And why shouldn't I be worried? So that's the conundrum.
Fionn McMahon, who's on the Wild Atlantic Way in the west of Ireland, which is a marvellous place to be, had an answer to that, and that's the correct answer. Sue in West Sussex got it right as well. They're protected in the Isle of Man, grey partridge shooting season. So whilst they can be shot in most of the UK, they can't be there. Now that wasn't quite what you wanted. I'll give the answer in a moment, or you will. Keith in Lingwood gave an answer as well. So did Susan Dye, listening to all 52 podcasts.
Goodness me, you'll need therapy, I think.
Susan Claxton. The answer is partridge, as its hunting season starts on the 1st of September, so they're in danger. But as Chris doesn't allow shooting on his land, they are safe. Not quite the right answer. So a lot of people got the 1st of September as the start of the grey partridge shooting season.
Yes,
But
so they're safe. There's no shooting game in this country on a Sunday. So on the 1st of September, the official date of the partridge shooting season, and some species of waterfowl as well, they're safe. But on the 2nd of September, that's the first official day you can legally shoot grey partridge and red-leg partridge, you're sporting, so that's why you should be worried. And two reasons perhaps why you shouldn't be worried. Firstly is partridges have been declared a red list species. That's a species causing grave conservation concern is the actual wording. And the second reason why they shouldn't be worried is that we don't carry out partridge shooting here at the farm. So we got some nearly right answers. Everybody's sort of pouncing around the right spot though, so well done everybody, and thank you very much for entering my conundrum.
so there's the answer. And the Isle of Man, Sue in West Sussex, you're quite right. That it's a absolute heaven and a paradise for grey partridge.
Yes, because they're not shot, and that I think will eventually happen here. Numbers have declined over the last 40 odd years. I mean, there are partridges everywhere, nearly as common as those sparrows we talked about earlier.
Well, there won't be any left to shoot, will there? If this carries on.
No, this is the problem, because much of the farm, there's no control. Much of the countryside, there's little or no control over them. Some of them are monitored, and people carry out responsible harvesting of the species on condition there is sufficient to still be able to shoot them. But several of the supermarkets I've written to only will sell food from sustainable sources, and Sainsbury's, I must say, was first on the list to stop selling English grey partridge in their stores. So congratulations to them, and several other supermarkets have followed their lead.
And thank you to everyone for all your wonderful emails. Sorry if we didn't mention you this week. Hopefully next week we can get to a few more of your questions and comments. The address to add to the debate and whatever you'd like to talk about, as always, is chris@countryside.podcast.co.uk. It only remains for me to say, Chris, happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
75 candles. That's a lot of puff. You're going to have to sum it up.
That is a lot of puff.
This is a Soundyard production. Music is by Tom Harris.
Hello, it's Anna and Sophie from Soundyard here. Our new service, Spoken Stories, is an incredible experience where we record the stories and voice of your loved one, which you can then hold on to forever.
It makes for an incredible gift, and anyone can make one. Take a listen to this. It beautifully captures the thoughts and feelings of life from a 6-year-old's perspective.
I'm 6 years old and I love running around. I can run very, very fast, but I'm even faster on my bike. That's why I love biking. It makes me feel energetic. And also I bike loads of places. I like doing sports like dodgeball. The people that are in charge in the world, well, I think that there should be no one in charge at all. So everyone's in charge. So there's no person that's in charge. So everyone is a bit more free. That's what I think. Well, what I try to change at the moment is global warming. It's when us humans litter, destroy the planet and all its nature. That's global warming. It makes me feel sad. And also, if us humans keep doing that, it could destroy the whole planet Earth, and then all of the human beings will be destroyed. I try to stop global warming, and also in my coat pocket I have a bit of Kit Kat litter I found on the floor once. I love the planet more than anything. Grown-ups should be stopping global warming, because grown-ups are more powerful than kids. But if kids can be more powerful than grown-ups, kids and grown-ups can work together and do it. Kids should be able to do the same things as grown-ups. They should have more rights. Well, I love myself because that I believe in a lot of things. That's what I love about myself. I like being a kid, but because when I'm a grown up, I'm gonna have my own kids because that's what I want. And also, I'm a bit worried to have kids, and I'm still gonna be a kid for like a long time. So I'm glad that's actually gonna happen. I'm glad I'm gonna stay a kid for a long time. I'm gonna have kids because I want to know what it feels like to be a parent. I'm gonna be a good parent.
Isn't that just gorgeous? If you'd like to find out more about recording a spoken story of your own, or you'd like to buy this as a present for someone, take a look at our website, www.soundyard.org/spoken stories, and take advantage of our introductory offer. Alternatively, you can get in touch via email hello@soundyard.org.
And if the internet isn't an option, you can leave a message with your details on our landline number. It's 01603 273 899, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.